This is BBC One. Now we join Clive Mason, Maureen Denmark and John Lee with See Here.
Hello. Today is Remembrance Sunday, and we'll be remembering the war years. We'll also be looking at Deaf Awareness Week, which finished last Sunday.
But first, Remembrance Sunday. The day when we remember all those people who lost their lives during the First and Second World Wars. It has generally been accepted that deaf people played a minor role in the war effort. But we aim to show that, in fact, members of the deaf community played a vital role in the defence of Britain. Manchester was one of the many cities in the country that suffered from the Blitz in the Second World War. Members of the Manchester Deaf Club volunteered to serve as firefighters during the Blitz. Their responsibility was to keep fire watch on the Centre for the Deaf and adjacent buildings. After the war, some members were awarded the Defence Medal for their services. We went to Manchester Deaf Club to talk to some people who remember those days. Our reporter in Manchester is Teddy Webb.
Wait for another.
I got a job here as centre organiser for Manchester Deaf Club, and I was looking through the books we've got, and in one particular book, which was about wartime, I noticed that quite a few deaf people got the Defence Medal, and they worked as ARPs and fire watchers and so on. Can you tell me about those days? Well, during the war, Mr. Schofield, our welfare officer, asked for volunteers to work as fire watchers, and quite a few of us agreed to do that, and I think altogether there were about 40 of us. So we agreed to become fire watchers. And then late in 1940, or maybe early in 1941, we went to the Gaumont Cinema, which is round the back here, about a quarter of a mile from here. And at the back of the cinema, on some spare ground, we were trained in fire watching and firefighting. There was a hut there, and there was a fireman with me. And he had a bucket of water and a stirrup pump. So I had to hold the hose and he'd pump the water through. We went into the hut when it was burning. We lit it. And had to use the hose to put out the fire. Now, spraying one bit, another bit of flame would pop up, and I was told not to do that, but to concentrate on one bit at a time and put it all out properly. And within 2 minutes, we were in and out, and it was really hot in there with the flames burning. Well, I worked through the war mostly on day shift and then went on to night work. And walking along on the way, there was an air raid, and I had to stop, wait till the air raid had gone, and then carry on going to work. And of course, it was pitch dark, trying to walk to work. And I was with another deaf man called Groom. The two of us were walking in a pitch darkness, trying to get to work. And then we were stopped by the Home Guard. They must have been shouting to us. And of course, we couldn't hear them. And he stuck his rifle in my stomach to see who I was and shouted at me. And then when he realized we were deaf, he said, "Go on then, off you go, get on and go to work." This thing, I can't take it anymore. It's too heavy. I can't stand it. Is this a photograph of you? Yep.
Yeah.
Very good, isn't it?
Yeah, but
Nellie, your parents are deaf. Now, during the war, how did you feel? I mean, you were quite young then. You remember Manchester Deaf Club was all right, but quite a lot of buildings around were bombed flat. I mean, how did you get on with your parents during the war? What was it like? Well, we knew that war was coming, and I was at a hearing school, of course, and all the children were evacuated. And I didn't want to go because I was very worried, and I couldn't sleep because I was so worried about my parents being deaf. If bombs were being dropped or the air raid siren went off, they wouldn't hear it. So I went to my mother and I said, "Please don't have me evacuated." And she said, "Why?" "Well, I want to stop with you. I'm thinking about both of you. I'm very worried." So my mother organised it so I could stay at home. So during the war, if the air raid sirens went off or there was an air raid, my job was to go and wake them up and tell them, and they'd get out of bed and get dressed quickly. And we always had a suitcase ready, and in there we had clothes and so on, because you never knew when there was going to be an air raid. And another little box which was very important. In that we had our policies, you know, death policies and insurance books, rent books and rates books and so on. And I had a bag with all my stuff in. And once when we were on our way to an air raid shelter, we had to stay near a wall as sort of protection in case bombs fell. But my father was so interested in what was going on up in the sky, he'd wander around looking up at the sky, watching the searchlights and the aeroplanes. He found it fascinating, and everybody would keep trying to get him to keep moving to get to the shelter, which was underground, of course. And one night we were all walking along, and I was trying to get my father to get a move on, and he was staring up at the sky, watching all this going on. And walking along, looking up, he didn't see a sort of platoon of the Home Guard. And he was walking along, looking up in the sky. He didn't hear them either, of course, and he bumped into them all, and they were all over the place. And, you know, it was embarrassing, but eventually we got my father into the shelter. Richard, now you've got most medals here. You've got 5 of them. Now, one of them is the BEM. Now, that's a pretty important medal, isn't it? The British Empire Medal. How did you get that? What happened to you? Well, one night, a Spitfire like this one crashed. And I was in what's called a crash party. And there was a telephone call to say that the Spitfire had crashed. And the other planes couldn't land. They kept circling around waiting to land. And so me and my flight sergeant actually towed this aeroplane off the runway with a tank. And then I walked up the runway to see if there were any bomb holes in the runway. That's right, and I walked up the runway with a torch and checked it, and then signalled to the control tower. I signalled that the runway was okay, got off the runway, and then got out of the way, and the other planes could then, the Spitfires like this one, could then land and come in safely. And then an officer came over to me and said, "Who are you?" So I gave him my name, and also the flight sergeant. And then eventually both of us heard that we'd been awarded the BEM. That's how it happened. Amazing,
Wow, that was-
5 medals. Fantastic.
Every year, the British Deaf Association holds an awareness week so that BDA branches can educate the general public and raise their awareness about deaf people. They organise various events, including library displays, sign language marathons, and other events. The theme for Awareness Week changes every year. In the past, we've had youth, discrimination, and education. Recently, we spoke to Jock Young, chairman of the BDA, about the theme for this year.
Well, the recognition of sign language is the theme for this year's Awareness Week. We're campaigning for our right to use sign language on an equal basis with other minority languages like Welsh, if they have their own language. And up in the north of Scotland, they have Gaelic. And one interesting thing is that in Europe, they've now agreed to support us in our aim of getting recognition of sign languages. And we hope that early in 1988, there'll be a motion put to the European Parliament for the recognition of sign languages. And that's where our campaign is aimed at this year, to get added momentum to the recognition of sign language, to support our rights.
The week was launched at the House of Commons, and Clive was there.
Well, here we are in London at the Houses of Parliament. And today, inside the House of Parliament, there's a press conference. And that's connected with British Deaf Awareness Week. And the theme of the week is BSL as a fourth language of Britain. There are speakers from Denmark, there's an MP, and quite a few other people speaking. Now, when the press conference is finished, I'm going to try and meet some of these people and talk to them. So we'll see you later. You're a member of the European Parliament. What's your involvement in this campaign to get recognition for sign languages?
Originally, there was a motion for resolution in the Parliament by a Mr. Kuipers asking for the standardisation of sign language for the deaf. This particular motion for resolution came to my committee, which is a committee which deals with aspects of education. We decided at that stage that we didn't want really standardisation. Having spoken to a lot of people and deaf associations, I came to the conclusion that what was necessary was the recognition of these sign languages in each country. So we changed the original motion for resolution slightly, and we are pursuing this one aspect of sign language, the recognition of sign language for the deaf in each of the member states. From that, everything else will follow on. Education, interpretation, the opening up of opportunities for deaf people, employment, etc. It is the single most important aspect, the recognition of the sign language as a legitimate language.
Now, the European Regional Secretariat has been working to establish the recognition of sign languages. Why is this necessary? Well, last year, the European Parliament appointed one person whose responsibility was to try and make sign languages throughout Europe standard, make them into one language. And of course, deaf people disagreed with this, so we got in touch with this person and had that change within the European Parliament. So if the European Parliament recognises sign languages officially, does that mean that Denmark will accept this ruling? Well, I think in Denmark, sign language is already accepted, and all we need is this new law to make it official. And I think once one country has done it, then others will follow. Now, maybe in Denmark we're a bit ahead of everyone else, and it is important, so I think the ERC has got some catching up to do. Now, you're setting up a parliamentary committee and putting forward a bill. Now, people in the House are not aware of deafness. How is this action going to make them more aware and recognise the problems of deaf people?
Well, to be honest, I think it's very difficult to believe that the bill will go through Parliament, but it will, I think, give an opportunity to demonstrate that there is support in Parliament for official recognition of BSL, that there is an understanding of the deprivation that deaf people suffer because they can't get interpreters and they consequently miss out on so many things. And I hope it will help get the British government to recognise that what's happening in Europe is something that they should broadly support and perhaps head off an instinct to resist it, either because certain educationalists don't approve or because it's going to cost money.
Also in Deaf Awareness Week, on the 29th of October, the Deaf Broadcasting Council lobbied 20 television studios all over Britain. The DBC is demanding a daily 30-minute national news programme on at least one television channel, using sign language and subtitles as well as voice. On the day of the lobby, the DBC handed their report, Deaf People Need the News, to TV bosses. A copy was also given to the Home Secretary. We filmed 2 of the lobbies at the BBC in London and at Yorkshire Television in Leeds. Deaf people need news because they're just not getting the information, and it's very important. We're being cut off from the world, effectively. For example, the Zeebrugge ferry disaster. I mean, we'd no idea what it was about as deaf people. We need subtitles, and for those who can't read subtitles, then we need it in sign language, with a sign language presenter, so we can find out what's happening in the world. It's very important. If we don't have this, then we've no idea what's going on. We're so far behind with the news, and it's really bad. We need subtitles and a sign language presenter so that we can keep up with hearing people. It's only fair. Deaf people are just not getting information. It's not their fault they can't hear. That's what we want. Well, deaf people pay the full license fee, and that includes the costs of radio, but deaf people don't use radio. They can't hear it. And so to make it fair, we would like more live subtitling on the news to put us on a par with hearing people. Well, we're campaigning and lobbying people coming in here as deaf people because we want them to let deaf people work in television news so that deaf people can follow the news and keep up with it. I mean, it's always done for hearing people. For example, that ferry disaster, we'd no idea what they were talking about. We couldn't follow what they said. It was all in speech, and it's just not suitable for deaf people. We need a deaf person on there to do it in sign language so we can understand it on an equal basis with hearing people. We're paying for it. And BBC1 and BBC2, ITV and Channel 4, all of the news on those channels is for hearing people. There's nothing for deaf people. And it's just a waste as far as we're concerned. We want a deaf person on at least one channel so that we can understand the news, and deaf people will then watch it.
Well, it's always useful to explore views, particularly with people that take such a keen interest in television. As it so happens, we've got a more formal meeting set up in 2 or 3 weeks' time, at any rate, to run over the points that were discussed. But particularly on a cold morning like this, it's interesting to see people taking such an active and keen interest in what we produce.
With us today is DBC rep Stephen Iliff.
Hello.
Hello. Now, DBC has been campaigning. What exactly are you hoping to achieve?
Well, really what we're hoping to achieve is an evening news programme of our own, with subtitles and sign language presentation included. And there are a couple of reasons for this. There's a deaf BSL community out there who are not getting information from television. They watch it and can't understand it at all. There's also a second group of deaf people who have reasonable English skills, but they don't have teletext TV sets, so that means they're still not getting the information. Very few deaf people, in fact, have teletext. So what we're aiming at is to get our own news programme with sign language presenters and subtitles included for that audience of over 5 million people.
Now, DBC had organised campaigns all over the country. How on earth did you achieve this? How did you make contact with them all? And have you had any positive responses from all this?
Well, the DBC went into deaf clubs and explained to deaf people what the campaign was about, that they're not getting information and so on, and it's in fact their right to get full information, and invited them to join in the campaign outside television companies. And quite a lot of deaf people turned up. So far the response, one of the ITV bosses has agreed with us that we need our own programme with open subtitles and sign language. Haven't got much in the way of response from the regions yet, so we're carrying on with the campaign and still putting pressure on both ITV and BBC. If any deaf people at home want a newsletter or a video sent to them, then should ask for it. We'll carry on campaigning.
That's great. I'd like to have that kind of thing available. Now, you say that you're demanding to have subtitles and voices and interpreters. Do you think DBC will achieve this?
Oh yes, if we carry on putting pressure on them, then I think it is possible to achieve it. For example, the Welsh-speaking community. There are about 34,000 people who speak only Welsh. The deaf community, there are 50,000, so there are more of them. And the Welsh have 20 hours a week of television and information and so on. And deaf people have, what, half an hour? There's a huge imbalance there. If they've had it, then we should achieve the same. But we have to roll up our sleeves and campaign hard first.
Great. Well, I wish you luck with all your responses. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Well, you need to get your sleeves up and carry on with this campaign. It's really good and interesting. Thank you, Stephen. Well, here's a bit of news. The chairman of the British Deaf Association has a lot of members in Britain, Jock Young. Some good news about him. He and his wife, Lillian Lawson, have had a baby girl last week. Congratulations to them both.
That's great. Congratulations.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
That edition of See Here will be shown again on Tuesday afternoon at 2:15 on BBC2. This week, next week, at 1 o'clock, today on BBC1, we'll be looking at the future of socialism in Europe. Vivian White will be talking to Brian Gould, Labour's election campaign coordinator in London, and the foreign affairs spokesman of Germany's SPD, Carsten Vogt, with film reports on socialist Sweden and the new Canadian socialists, this week, next week, at 1 o'clock. And now on BBC One, it's time for farming.
problem, essentially, with English wine in the public eye is that, like any product anywhere in the world, some is good and some is not good. People tend to try an English wine, not enjoy it, and therefore condemn the entire product. Whereas if you were buying a French wine or German wine, which you weren't so fond of, you'd probably go for another bottle until you found one you liked. But that's, and sadly, is not always the experience with English wine.
Good afternoon and welcome to Farming. Later in the